Do you guys want to see an NBA coach who has lost all hope?
Put on a jersey, represent it properly. Unacceptable. Period. It is.
That was Doug Christie after the Kings' 33-point loss to the Atlanta Hawks. A Hawks team with no Trae Young walked into Sacramento and beat them by 33. And if you were surprised to hear that, well, you haven't been paying attention to the Sacramento Kings this season, because in a league with teams like the Nets, the Pelicans, the Hospital Pacers, and the Wizards, the Sacramento Kings might actually be the most pathetic team in the NBA. And I'm not sure it's close, because while some of those teams I mentioned have reasons for being bad, injuries, youth, Pelicans, this is a franchise that just a couple of years ago was in the best position they had been in for decades. They even had their fun little motto. And you know what they did? They threw it all away so they could build around, let me check, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, and Zach LaVine. 3 guys who are traffic cones on defense, and 2 guys who can't shoot. And apparently DeMar DeRozan can't score anymore if you look at his recent game against the Hawks. And when I say they're the most pathetic team in the NBA, just look at their recent 4 games. Need I say any more? Actually, I will say more, because over that 4-game stretch, the Kings are 30th for defense, 30th for net rating, and they are 29th for offensive rating, thanks to the Hospital Pacers. And whilst teams like the Wizards play the likes of Alex Sarr, Keontae George, and Trey Johnson significant minutes, or the Pacers wait for a superstar who was originally a King to return, what are the Kings exactly waiting for? Because this was a team built to compete this season. Compete for what? None of us know. I think everyone laughed at this team before the season. I know I certainly did, but I thought they would at least be a miserable 35 wins. I thought they would at least be competitive, given the fact their top 6 players have all been in the league for 10 seasons. But no, they're miserable, and they are even worse than mediocre. And unfortunately, it's all their fault. Right here is the Sacramento Kings' top 6 in minutes played from the 2022 season, and next to them is the top 6 in minutes played from this season. In other words, the Kings went from a young, exciting, fast-paced team built around 2 all-star point guards to a team of players past their prime who didn't even win anything during their primes. And that's not a shot at Russ. He's made the finals. Everyone else right there have been losers when it's mattered most. And for some reason, the Kings thought it would be a good idea to build around that core of players. And I mentioned it before, but this really is all their fault. Since 2006, the Sacramento Kings have had 2 seasons in which they finished with a record above 500. Those 2 seasons came in back-to-back years. Those were the only 2 full seasons Mike Brown was the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Because after taking the Kings from a 30-win team in 2022 to a 48-win team in 2023, and then having a 46-win season the following year, the Kings decided they would fire Mike Brown 30 games into his 3rd season as head coach. For a franchise that was comfortable being awful for nearly 2 decades, it took them less than half a season to turn on Mike Brown. When you think about where that franchise was before Mike got there, it's really shocking. That's what Steve Kerr said following the firing, and he wasn't wrong. I mean, look at what Mike Brown is doing in New York, turning them into one of the best offenses in the league. And after giving them the 2 best seasons they have had in 2 decades, they fired him less than halfway into the season. And then there was De'Aaron Fox's side of things, who decided to really speak his mind after getting traded. You fire the coach and you don't do an interview, so all the blame was on me? Did it weigh on me? No, I don't give a. But the fact y'all are supposed to be protecting your player and you'll let that happen, I felt the organization didn't have my back. And this is the problem with Sacramento. The franchise, it's just rotten. Mike Brown is the best head coach the Kings have had since I've been alive. De'Aaron Fox was their franchise player. Both of those guys got thrown under the bus. And to top it all off, they somehow made the decision that the Chicago Bulls with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan were so great that they would try to replicate that in the Western Conference. Because you know what I've always thought? If a team can't make the Eastern Conference playoffs, how about bringing them to the much tougher Western Conference to try and make the playoffs? And it's not just the big trades either, it is just every move they have made has been head-scratching. How about trading away 2 second-round picks for Jonas Valanciunas halfway through last year, only to then trade Valanciunas for the worst player in the NBA as a way to save cap space? Or how about the same thing with Jake LaRavia, trading away a second-round pick to acquire him, only to then lose him in free agency? How about fans chanting for Keon Ellis to enter the game? Yeah, because Doug Christie isn't excused either. He has been dealt a terrible hand, but he had the opportunity to play Keon Ellis more minutes, someone who actually plays with energy, who actually hits three-point shots, and when he was forced to play him in the most recent game against the Hawks, he was the best player for the Kings on the floor. You saw what Russell Westbrook gave this team as a starter, and you opted against all of this. And if you want to know how bad it is for the Kings, their 3 highest paid players, the big 3, which sounds disgusting to even say about these guys, look at the Kings' numbers when each of these guys are on the floor versus off the floor. Let me remind you guys, your team is supposed to be better when your highest paid players and supposedly best players are on the floor. They are not supposed to be the Charlotte Bobcats and somehow better with them off the floor. And I don't think any of us expect anything more from Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan is pretty old at this point, but Domantas Sabonis is supposed to be in the prime of his career. People were comparing him to Nikola Jokic. Most people were saying he was better than Şengün, than Chet Holmgren, these guys. This man is not better than Isaiah Hartenstein. Because without Mike Brown, without De'Aaron Fox, his playmaking has been non-existent. His efficiency is worse than ever, he's been fouling more than ever, and he is an absolute traffic cone on defense. And to make things even worse, according to Kings reporter Matt George, Sabonis is unhappy with his role.
I have heard rumblings of Domantas Sabonis being unhappy with how he has been featured on the offensive end.
If you reportedly were one of the reasons your coach was fired, and then are now complaining about your new coach, I'm not trying to hear it. And it probably seems like I'm being unfair on Sabonis. No, everyone on this team, aside from Russ, Keon Ellis, the rookies, and Malik Monk, who by the way they were trying to trade and have reduced his role on offense, those are the only guys that have been somewhat decent this season. Everyone else deserves blame, from top to bottom, and for a franchise that was looking to be competitive this year, they've been the worst team in the NBA over the last week, and I just don't see things getting much better for this franchise. And Kings fans, all I can say is, I am sorry? Like, what else is there to say? I'm sorry. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, have a great day in spite of this. Bye.